everybody. Welcome to Women in Retail Talks. I'm Melissa Campanelli, the co-founder of the Women in Retail Leadership Circle, and today I'm delighted to be joined by Sarah Spivey, the Chief Marketing Officer of Braze, which is a leading global customer engagement platform. And they're also a great partner of ours. So thank you so much for joining me today, Sarah.
Thank you for having me, Melissa. It's great to be here.
Perfect. Okay, so let's get started. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your career journey? I know you've been in the tech industry for a while, or the retail tech industry. So what are some of the roles you've had prior to your position as CMO of Braze?
So I started in what I think you would consider retail tech in 2015 when I joined Bazaar Voice. But I've been in various forms of marketing tech software since 2008. And then prior to that, I spent a long time in computer hardware, computer storage, semiconductors. Started my career at Hewlett Packard right out of college. And with the exception of just a short foray into management consulting after graduate school, I've been in tech my entire career. So I joined Bazaar Voice in 2015. And that was really kind of my first entree into selling into the retail sector. Bazaar Voice is a ratings review software. And then when I moved to Braze, we had a lot of the same sort of customer set that we had at Bazaar Voice in terms of big retailers. And I think, both platforms are really designed to just make sure retailers are meeting their customers where they are.
Perfect. So you just mentioned Braze, a little bit about it, but why don't you tell us a little bit more about what Braze is and what it does? And then what is the biggest problem your solution solves for retailers, in your opinion?
So Braze is a customer engagement platform, which is a lot of words, but basically, I think it really tries to describe and service anytime a retailer or any other a company that has a consumer following is trying to engage with customers, whether it's in a transaction, post-transaction, pre-transaction. Cracking the customer retention code is a big challenge for retailers, particularly in the past year. A lot of them added a lot of new customers, but it's been a little tougher to hang on to some of them. And the stakes are so high relative to acquisition costs, just continuing to climb. So this whole notion of once you have a customer, keeping it is the right economic imperative. And I think that's where Braze really helps you to leverage all the data about what your customers are doing well, and then use that in a way that engages them either for, at the basic level, future transactions, but really keeping them kind of under the tent, for the longer term. And customer engagement is really what makes the difference, I think. It's the umbrella term for full set of activities that companies use to build direct relationships. And Braze specifically helps retailers understand what really matters in the moment by listening to real-time data that customers are producing and then creating dynamic actions as a result of that. At the end of the day, it's all about getting, the right message to get the right attention from a consumer. People are loyal to brands that provide those relevant and timely experiences. And the Braze platform makes it simple for retail marketing teams to orchestrate all kinds of multivariate campaigns across all channels: email, in-app messaging, in-browser messaging, SMS, and whatever comes next.
Wow, great. Sounds like a great solution and very helpful to retailers. You did just mention brands and campaigns. I'd love to hear about maybe a great digital marketing campaign you've been a part of at Braze since being there. If you have a great particular customer story that you want to share.
Yeah, there are so many good ones. I mean, one that really stood out to me, and I think it stood out to me because when you think about what they're trying to do, it's so counterintuitive from a marketing perspective. So Bloom and Wild is a client of ours in the UK, and they have basically if you will, a 1-800-Flowers sort of arrangement in the United Kingdom. So it's the largest e-com floral delivery service. And Mother's Day, of course, is a very important season for them. And so they did a campaign last year that I think when you hear it, people say they did what, but they basically recognize that Mother's Day communications for a lot of people are hard, either that have lost mothers or, are trying to become mothers and having a hard time. And so they invited all of their customers to opt out of Mother's Day messaging if they wanted to. And they had 18,000 opt-outs, which when you hear about that number, you think, oh my goodness, like where did all those people go? But remember, those 18,000 still received other company offers on campaigns, just not Mother's Day. And the engagement they got from that was incredible. The social media engagement was enormous. They got 5 times the customer feedback from phone and email, all incredibly positive about just being very considerate of Mother's Day being a tough time for a lot of people. And it also kicked off what has become in the UK something called the thoughtful marketing movement that really has now stretched into lots of other businesses trying to think about how to improve the customer experience by suppressing messages their customers might not want to receive. So I just think the Blue and Wild campaign kind of took it to a whole nother level by thinking about what's really important to the person at the other end of that email or push message. And that sales and discounts aren't the only motivators for people to stay with you for the long haul. So it's one of my favorites.
That's great. I always love to hear a great Mother's Day story, especially since we're heading into Mother's Day.
Exactly.
I'm going to jump ahead a little bit and talk about, some of your experiences as a leader, because I know a lot of our listeners are really interested in our members and our partners' sort of careers and how they lead their teams. Let's talk a little bit about 2020. We all know it was a year that we'd like to forget, but many people speak about silver linings they found amidst the pandemic. So what was your biggest silver lining in a professional sense?
I think the biggest aha for me this year, and it was not only with my own organization, but also with my peer organization at Braze, I think we've really seen that when you build strong organizations around very specific objectives and metrics for success, someone's location becomes irrelevant to getting the work done. So I guess the silver lining for me is knowing that when you build an org that isn't dependent upon one individual leader to make it work, and that you've hired and developed really great people, and you've made it really clear what the expectations of them are to succeed, it really does happen on its own. And I think that's been a big eye-opening thing for me this year. And I think, certainly opens up the possibility for us to think differently about, how we value someone's presence, how we value someone's work. So that's probably been the biggest one for me. And then just, in a selfish way, I have to say, no joke, that no business travel has been quite a luxury this year. So that's been a big silver lining too.
Yes, that's true. I spoke to someone the other day, and she said that she counted and she ended up saving 2 months of time not traveling.
Yeah, that
So
doesn't surprise me. Yeah, I mean, obviously I miss seeing customers and prospects face to face and employees that are in other locations, but I do think we've kind of found a way to stay connected and albeit through video. But I do think it's really changed people's expectations going forward around what physical presence really means and when it's required and when it's not.
Perfect. So let's also talk about the fact that you're a CMO at a major technology company, but you're also a woman. Can you talk about maybe any obstacles you may have had rising to the top, as a woman in tech, and how you overcame them?
Well, I think obviously I've been at this a long time, and it's been good to see it change. It's certainly better than it was, 20 years ago. I think there are some common threads, though. I think the one thing I would tell women coming up is, the best way around is through develop a tough skin on the outside. But I think compassion and empathy on the inside is what makes women leaders great. So don't try and morph yourself into something you're not to fit in. At the same time, be clear-eyed about what the rest of the organization sees and how decisions get made. Find allies. I have found that, finding a supportive male has been really important in my career. I kind of tend to look for working men that have working wives or daughters. I think if you're trying to create a world that their daughters are going to have to live in, they tend to be a little more empathetic, and they tend to think about it a little bit differently than just their own daily experience.
That's interesting.
And then the last thing I would say is always, always, always make sure you've got your facts and your data lined up to support any argument you're trying to make. Otherwise, it's very easy for people to label you as emotional. And then lastly, I would just say, don't let disappointment set you back. It's inevitable. So learning how to deal with it and pick yourself up and dust yourself off and move on and learn from your failures is absolutely critical.
Great advice. I'm going to jump ahead a little bit, and let's talk about the fact that you formerly served as the vice chairman of the board of Girls Start, which is an organization focused on increasing girls' interest and engagement in STEM. So why is this cause so important to you? And what are some things that the retail and tech industries can do to get more women in STEM roles?
I'm passionate about it because I'm hoping that I'm sort of the last generation to have to worry that my gender is going to impact my success in the technology sector, which may be a lofty ambition, but I'm not giving up on that. And I also believe very strongly that women on, design teams and tech teams build better products. So we absolutely need more women that understand technical disciplines. We also need more women in technical disciplines in venture capital and private equity. As long as the capital is still coming from a faucet that's all men, female entrepreneurs are going to have a tougher time. And that's bad for consumers. So I think venture capital in particular, they need to really look harder to find technically competent women to put into these roles. Because I think it starts there. It starts with money and investment. And then once the companies are funded, continuing to put women on teams where they can make a difference. I mean, everybody has read all of the research. There is not anyone out there who can't see that more diverse teams build better products and are better cultures. So I think in the retail sector specifically, I think I would start thinking about ways to include women in a lot of the sort of data science, business intelligence, marketing operations, sales operations roles, right? There's just a world of gender neutral opportunity in those fields. And, I don't think we should have to push for inclusion of women per se there, right? The demand for those skills is so high, you can't really afford bias, right? If you look at the number of roles that are open, particularly around data analytics, to not look at women as candidates for those positions is it's economically idiotic. So, if you've got a data scientist role open, you got to find the best brain to do the job. And right now it's a seller's market. So you don't have the luxury of bias. So I think there's a lot of opportunities for women to take technical skills into retail. And I also think the whole shift from omni-channel, not shift from omni-channel, but shift from brick and mortar into more e-commerce, obviously that creates a plethora of technology roles for women as well. So I think there's just a lot more that can be done there.
For sure. Great information. So let's talk a little bit about your leadership style. How would your team define your style, and how do you get your team motivated to do their best work?
So I think it starts with, and I talked about this a little bit earlier in terms of what's been the silver lining for me for this year is I've always lived by this philosophy, but we have really seen it in action this year. I think, you have to give people enough guidance so that they stay on track, but you also have to give them the freedom to apply, their own sense of how to accomplish tasks, right? So I'm big on be really clear about what it is you want and not how you want it done. So, I can provide really clear objectives, very quantifiable measures. My goal is that every employee really understands such that on any given day or any given moment, if they're working on something, if they can't figure out exactly how it fits into the bigger picture, marketing strategy or critical objectives, they should stop doing it and ask some questions. And so as a result, I think every team member knows how and why their day-to-day efforts contribute value to the company, and they can work incredibly independently. So as a leader, I don't need to hover. I don't need to, to be specific about how I want something done if I'm clear about the deliverable and the task. So I think people feel like they have a really good balance of, good direction, but also not, sort of overly involved in the day-to-day work. I mean, I am emphatically not a micromanager. I don't have a lot of time or patience for drama and politics. And I think my team probably appreciates that.
For sure. That's what ends up happening, I guess, with micromanaging. So that's great that you're aware of that. So a couple more questions. So what are you most looking forward to during the rest of 2021 and 2022 going forward?
Well, I got my second vaccination a week ago. So by this Saturday,
Great.
I will be loaded for bear. So I'm definitely looking forward to, seeing family. I haven't seen my sister and my nieces and nephews and all their kids since Christmas of 2019. So I'm definitely looking forward to that. And then, even though I said I was, happy about no business travel for a year, I am looking forward to, getting back on the road selectively, to get out and see both employees and clients and prospects. And then I'm, looking forward to a little vacation travel as well. And just a change of scenery from where we've kind of been this year. So.
Were anywhere interesting or fun that you're thinking about?
Well, I have a trip tentatively planned to go to our Braze office in Singapore in July. Hopefully
wow.
that will hold. We'll see. But that's the tentative plan. And then based on that, I'm going to try and do some travel in and around Asia, depending on, where I can get in and out without a lot of rigmarole and obviously making sure that everything is safe and no
Safety
possibility
concerns,
of
right.
no possibility of picking up the virus or spreading it. So
yeah, that sounds great.
So yeah, I'm looking forward to that.
Okay, so I always like to end our podcasts with something special. So what is your favorite quote?
Well, I'm a Texas transplant, but even before I moved to Texas, I was always a big fan of the former Governor Ann Richards. I thought she was such a straight shooter and full of straight talk on any topic. And one of her favorite sayings was, if you don't have a seat at the table, you're on the menu. And I think it's just an important reminder to all of us that we have to step up to responsibly asking hard questions and don't settle for going along to get along, and never assume that somebody else is taking care of you or your priorities. Make it your own business to get your voice heard.
Perfect. That basically sums up our discussion. Thank you so much, Sarah. I really enjoyed getting to know you a little bit better, and you have such great advice and messaging for our listeners. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
Great. And I also want to thank all of our listeners for listening. For more information on this podcast, you can check out our podcast channel page at womeninretail.com/podcasts for show notes. Also, Women in Retail Talks is available on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Stitcher, and Spotify. And please make sure to subscribe on our podcast channel page as well. Finally, if you've enjoyed this episode, please take a few moments to rate and review this podcast. So with that, until next time, this has been Women in Retail Talks.